I just want to close by saying that what was once the Department of Justice has become the Department of Revenge and Corruption. Rather than pursuing cases without fear or favor, this DOJ seeks to favor the president's friends and instill fear in his alleged enemies. If you're a friend of the president, this corrupt DOJ will bend over backwards to help you, just like it dropped the bribery investigation of Tom Homan, like it's considering paying money to January 6 rioters, and like it has put antitrust enforcement decisions in the hands of well-connected lobbyists. But if you're on the wrong side of this president, you will face the wrath of DOJ. No matter what the facts, law, or justice support, James Comey is indicted days after the president's social media directive. Experienced career prosecutors are fired just because they were assigned to work on January 6 cases. Blue states are sued to get highly sensitive private voter data, whereas red states are left alone. The double standard is clear, and the American people are waking up.
Said his predecessors did fully investigate. The second and third 1023 forms relate to the first in that they reference potential Biden family criminal conduct. Senator Johnson and I made these two public, and we simply want to know whether the government has investigated what it found, and if not, why not? Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, FISA Section 702 will expire in 6 months. In response to my questions for the record, at your confirmation hearing, you said you did not have experience with FISA, but if confirmed, you would consult with experts at DOJ. Now, you've had that opportunity. Do you support adding additional safeguards for searching Americans' communications in the 702 database?
Senator, Section 702 is a vital source of foreign intelligence and instrumental in keeping Americans safe. We also take individuals' rights of Americans, their individual rights of all Americans, very seriously. And many statutory reforms to FISA have incorporate safeguards. They have to incorporate safeguards to protect our civil liberties. The Department of Justice looks forward to working with you to discuss anything regarding 702.
Appreciate
I believe
that.
my staff, and Senator, I also want to thank you for this hearing. Your staff met with my staff, and I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. We're going to be working on 702, so I appreciate the openness to further amending 702. At your confirmation hearing, you assured me that it is the Department of Justice's decision to determine what cases will be prosecuted. Last month, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was forced out. President Trump then posted the message behind me asking about prosecuting James Comey. You then appointed a new U.S. attorney who within days secured an indictment against James Comey. That social media post behind me saying, "What about Comey?" was directed to Pam. Are you the Pam that the president was referring to?
I'm sure I was.
So it's very clear to me that when the president posts something like that he considers the DOJ to be his law firm and you his lawyer. And in fact, very shortly after the post to you, Comey gets indicted. Last year, President Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan, was videotaped taking a bag with $50,000 in cash from undercover FBI agents after suggesting he could help with government contracts. Sounds like a bribe. 2 weeks ago, DOJ officials reportedly shut down the bribery investigation into Mr. Homan. Ms. Bondi, did you approve closing the Homan investigation, bribery investigation?
Just get rid of that. Senator Hirono, as I stated earlier, the Department of Justice and the FBI conducted a thorough review, and they found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing. You were also on video outside the White House protesting with a group called CASA, where Antifa members were. Does that mean you're a member of Antifa?
You know, I simply asked the question as to whether or not you approve the shutting down of the investigation of Mr. Homan. I have to assume that you did because the FBI reports to you. But the American people would look at the situation where this person is taking a $50,000 in cash, no less, and you testified today that a thorough investigation was done. Now, I have to assume, I conclude, that since no wrongdoing was determined, that in answer to Senator Whitehouse's question, he kept the money. He kept the money, and I hope that he put that on his tax returns as income. Next question. Over 1,200 rioters were convicted of charges related to January 6th. President Trump has since pardoned nearly all of them. As if that weren't enough, last month there were reports that a lawyer for the January 6 rioters met with senior DOJ officials about setting up a compensation fund like the one that Congress set up after 9/11 to compensate these rioters. Ms. Bondi, is anyone at DOJ considering setting up a compensation fund for January 6 rioters? Yes or no?
Senator, I have had no meetings or discussions about a fund.
So would you support such a fund? Would you okay such a fund?
Senator, you can send me the information on the fund, and I'd be happy to look at it.
No, but do you think that's a good idea to, this is what I'm getting at. Because to actually set up a fund and to have people talking with your senior people at DOJ, political people, about creating a fund, and you won't let us know what you think about that, that's pretty unbelievable. On January 30th of this year, the Trump DOJ's Antitrust Division sued to block the merger of two tech companies. Then, well-connected lobbyists met with your political deputies who overruled the career staff and approved the merger. So there's a settlement on that. And separately, DOJ sued Ticketmaster last year for monopolizing concert tickets and forcing consumers to pay outrageous fees. Ticketmaster has hired the exact same lobbyists who met with senior DOJ political people regarding the merger of the two tech companies. So my question is, Ms. Bondi, have lobbyists met with your political deputies about the Ticketmaster case?
Senator Hirono, as I stated earlier, I am not going to discuss anything that is ongoing. Gail Slater runs the Antitrust
I would
office,
say
and
that
Gail Slater, if I can finish, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running my antitrust unit.
It's highly likely, Ms. Bondi, that the same lobbyists who met with your people basically got rid of the antitrust case.
Senator, I don't think a lot of people
I
like
would
that
say
you were
that
out
they're probably
protesting with
meeting you
Antifa.
right now. Next question. You have fired dozens of career prosecutors because they worked on cases involving President Trump or January 6 rioters. For example, one career federal prosecutor who secured over 100 convictions in Florida. He also spent time in D.C. prosecuting January 6 cases. He received an outstanding review only 2 days before you signed a memo firing him. The memo cited no reason for his firing. Are you firing career prosecutors solely because they worked on cases like January 6th that the president doesn't like?
Senator Hirono, I am not going
Yes
to
or
talk
no?
about personnel matters with you.
Well, we all know that hundreds of career prosecutors have left the DOJ, and literally hundreds, we're told. And
Yeah,
you know,
Senator,
you've
are you
lost. The
familiar with the one that threw a
has
sandwich
lost-
at an ICE officer? Are you a Homeland Security officer?
is the
Are you familiar
reason.
with the one who went out on her lunch break and was
Bondi,
making obscene gestures?
Would you say that DOJ losing these career prosecutors and the thousands of hours of experience they have prosecuting criminals, that is not a reassuring situation?
Senator, many employees took the fork in the road and resigned. DOJ is hiring committed prosecutors who will actually come into the office and work and not work remotely and
think we all
prosecute
know
violent
that-
criminals around the country and terrorists. And
When
I am
you-
very proud
when you
of the
fire-
work all of our prosecutors
I'm running
are
out of
doing.
time, so I think you should stop with your continuous interruptions, in my opinion. Mr. Chairman, I just want to close by saying that what was once the Department of Justice has become the Department of Revenge and Corruption. Rather than pursuing cases without fear or favor, this DOJ seeks to favor the president's friends and instill fear in his alleged enemies. If you're a friend of the president, this corrupt DOJ will bend over backwards to help you, just like it dropped the bribery investigation of Tom Homan, like it's considering paying money to January 6 rioters, and like it has put antitrust enforcement decisions in the hands of well-connected lobbyists. But if you're on the wrong side of this president, you will face the wrath of DOJ, no matter what the facts, law, or justice support. James Comey is indicted days after the president's social media directive. Experienced career prosecutors are fired just because they were assigned to work on January 6 cases. Blue states are sued to get highly sensitive private voter data, whereas red states are left alone. The double standard is clear, and the American people are waking up to the corruption and favoritism and the lawlessness at the DOJ. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I respond, Chairman?
Yes.
May I respond?
Yes, you may respond. Then Senator Kennedy.
Thank you. The double standard is crystal clear, Senator Hirono, crystal clear, because you didn't complain for 4 years when President Trump was being targeted by Jack Smith, by the last Justice Department. But the American people spoke loud and clear when they overwhelmingly elected him. The two-tier system of justice is over.
Senator Kennedy. Yes.
What we just witnessed in this hearing was not a routine exchange of policy disagreements or procedural clarifications. It was a raw collision over the soul of American justice. In the final moments, Senator Hirono delivered a blistering indictment, declaring that what once stood as the Department of Justice has, in her words, become the Department of Revenge and Corruption. And across the dais, Pam Bondi did not simply reject that charge. She reflected it back, accusing critics of ignoring years of selective enforcement and insisting the era of a two-tier system is over. That clash was not accidental. It was the climax of a deeper struggle playing out in plain sight. This moment matters because it strips away the polite language that usually shields power. For nearly 10 minutes, the hearing laid bare two irreconcilable visions of justice. One side warned of favoritism, political pressure, and selective accountability. The other framed its actions as long overdue correction, a reckoning with what it sees as past imbalance. And between those positions stands the American public, watching an institution meant to be blind to politics pulled openly into the arena of power. Listen carefully to what was said and what was not. Questions about surveillance authorities and civil liberties were met with broad assurances. Concerns about prosecutorial independence collided with explanations that avoided specifics. Allegations involving investigations shut down, cases advanced with unusual speed, and career prosecutors dismissed without explanation were not resolved. They were deflected. That in itself tells a story. In a democracy, unanswered questions from the Justice Department do not fade quietly. They echo. This hearing reveals something fundamental about how authority now operates in Washington. Justice is no longer just about statutes and evidence. It is about trust. Trust that investigations are launched without fear. Trust that they are ended without favor. Trust that prosecutors are retained or removed based on merit, not political alignment. When that trust fractures, every decision, even lawful ones, becomes suspect in the eyes of the public. The exchange also exposes the immense pressure bearing down on the Department of Justice from all sides. Senators demand clarity, accountability, and transparency. The executive branch asserts its mandate, its interpretation of reform, its claim to legitimacy through elections. And career professionals inside the system are caught in between, watching decades of norms shift in real time. This is not just a personnel dispute or a policy disagreement. It is a test of whether institutions can survive the weight of relentless political gravity. Notice how quickly the conversation moved from specific cases to sweeping moral judgments. That escalation is telling. When oversight hearings turn into philosophical battles over loyalty and legitimacy, it signals that the guardrails are under strain. The Department of Justice was designed to be insulated from precisely this kind of moment, where every prosecutorial decision is interpreted as either vengeance or vindication, depending on which side of the aisle you sit on. Yet this is the reality we now inhabit. One senator sees corruption and favoritism. Another sees correction and accountability. Both claim to speak for justice. Both claim to defend the American people. And neither side is willing to concede even an inch, because to do so would be to admit that the system itself might be compromised. That is the deeper meaning of this clash. It is not just about Pam Bondi or Senator Hirono. It is about whether Americans can still believe that justice is administered evenly, or whether it has become another battlefield where power determines outcomes. When hearings end with accusations this severe, when rebuttals rest on electoral victories rather than transparent explanations, the damage goes beyond headlines. It seeps into public confidence. History shows us that institutions rarely collapse all at once. They erode gradually through moments like this. Moments where answers are partial, motives are questioned, and the public is left to choose which version of reality feels more believable. The danger is not disagreement. The danger is normalization. Normalizing the idea that justice must always serve one side to correct the sins of the other. Normalizing the belief that investigations are only legitimate when they target your opponents. Normalizing silence when accountability is demanded. And yet, there is also a reason these hearings are public. There is a reason these confrontations are recorded, dissected, and remembered. Sunlight still matters. Oversight still matters. Voices raised in disagreement still matter. Even in moments of sharp division, the act of questioning power openly, forcefully, on the record, remains a cornerstone of democratic life. What we saw today was uncomfortable, contentious, and unresolved. And that may be the most honest reflection of where the country stands. The struggle over justice is not settled. It is ongoing. It is being argued line by line, case by case, hearing by hearing. The outcome will not be decided by a single exchange, but by whether transparency ultimately outpaces secrecy and accountability outlasts loyalty. In the end, the true measure of a justice system is not who it protects when times are calm, but how it behaves when power is contested and scrutiny is intense. That test is unfolding now, in real time, before the American people. Stay vigilant, question authority, demand clarity. And never look away when the foundations of justice are being debated in the open. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA and support our work to expose the truth.